What do you see when you walk down a busy street? Well, most people see obstacles, really. I see stories. I see faces. I see moments that vanish just in a fraction of a second like that, and they'll never happen again. So, as well as the obvious motorhome content, the park-ups, the food, the wine, the places we visit, because that's what this Places and Faces Europe series is all about, yeah? There's also going to be some photographic content, which is going to be very important for the channel. But before we get into the how, let me tell you a little bit about the why and a little bit about myself, because if you're new to this channel, you might be wondering who the slightly mad 67-year-old is wandering around Europe's streets with a camera. Well, my name is Kenny Martin, and I've been a professional photographer for over 45 years. Portrait studios, family studios, commercial studios. I've been mentoring other photographers running their own studios. That's been my world for a long, long time. But alongside all that, quietly, probably privately, I would say, I've had this other love, shooting the streets. Now, I can't tell you exactly when it started. I don't think there was a single moment where I decided that I wanted to do that. There was no workshops, there was no kind of seminar, there was no road to Damascus. I think it was more of a long, slow burn, a long fuse burning away throughout my career. And that eventually made me pick up my camera and say, do you know what? I'm going to just go and capture some everyday life. After 45 years of shooting for clients, I realised that I needed to start shooting for myself. And once I started, I couldn't stop. Now, I've got a fairly decent library of photographic books that I've built up over the years. But the ones that I come back to time and time again are either portraits, which is my first love at the end of the day. That's what I've done for 45 years in my career. Or it's the work of the great street and art photography pioneers, Cartier-Bresson, Vivian Maier, Diedo Murayama. These people change the way human beings see the world. They're so important. And I want to show you what I've learned from them and from years of doing this myself, as Nina and I hopefully soon will be travelling throughout Europe in our motorhome. Now, street photography, I guess it means different things to different people. And I think that's one of the things that makes it so endlessly fascinating. For me, I've got 3 distinct styles. And over this series, we're going to look at each one in depth. The first one, I call street level observation. Or perhaps to make it simpler, it's the waiting game. And this is the most classical form. You're watching, you're waiting. You're looking for, as Cartier-Bresson says, the decisive moment. That literally fraction of a second when everything in the frame aligns perfectly. The second style is what I call shooting from the hip. And this is my personal favourite, if I'm honest. Now, you're not looking through the viewfinder here. You're holding the camera low at waist or hip height, and you're flying blind, trusting your instincts, trusting your feet, trusting your eye, even though your eye isn't actually anywhere near the camera. The images that you can get this way are absolutely extraordinary, raw, immediate, cinematic. And the third kind, and probably the most challenging, is the most rewarding. It's street portraiture. And this is where you actually approach a complete stranger on the street and ask them if you can take their photograph properly, eye to eye, with their full cooperation. That one takes nerves. And we'll talk about nerves later on. Each of these styles demands something different from you as a photographer. Different gear, different mindset, a different relationship with the people around you. And each one, done well, produces images that are so completely unlike anything you'll create in a studio or in a landscape location, because the street is alive and it doesn't wait for you. Now, here's where this gets interesting. At least for me. Nina and I have done something that most people our age would consider completely mad. We're in the process of selling our house. We're selling, getting rid of most of our belongings. We'll keep some, of course, in storage, some important mementos. And we're moving into a motorhome to spend the next few years travelling Europe. But here's the thing about Europe from a street photographer's point of view. It's extraordinary territory. You've got ancient Medinas in southern Spain and Portugal. You've got chaotic, beautiful markets in Italy. You've got narrow, cobbled lanes of French villages where old men sit playing some game and arguing about nothing in particular. And then you've got the dramatic faces of Eastern Europe. Now, Nina's dad is Polish, and we've been a couple of times, and that's an area I really want to explore. We've got the Czech Republic, they've got the Balkans. Now, the history in these places is written right into people's expressions. And as a portrait and street photographer, I'm going to feel like a child who's been let loose in the world's greatest sweet shop. Every country's got a different light, different architecture, different faces, I guess different cultural attitudes towards being photographed. And we'll talk about that because it actually matters. What's perfectly acceptable in one country, that can cause real problems in another. But the sheer variety of human life and visual experience available to us over the next few years is something I genuinely cannot wait to explore. And of course, we want to take you with us, step by step, shot by shot, to capture these faces. I've had to rethink everything, starting with what's in my camera bag. Now, I know, photographers, your first question is always about the kit. And here's the honest answer. For street photography, less is more, almost always. I've shot street images on Phase 1 and Hasselblad medium format cameras. These are large, expensive pieces of equipment and would not generally be regarded as street instruments. I've shot in a small Fuji mirrorless, which I love. It's ancient, it was relatively cheap, it's covered in black tape, but its prime lenses are superb, and it's a discreet camera for the streets. And I've shot in an iPhone. And you know what? Some of my favourite images have come from the smallest camera and the iPhone. I've even produced a couple of books in Berlin and Venice, shot entirely on the iPhone, because on the street, the cameras that work best are the ones that you can operate quickly, quietly, and confidently without drawing attention to yourself and fumbling around changing settings while that moment disappears. Now, for the kind of travel street photography we're going to be doing in Europe, I'll primarily be using all these cameras. Each situation will dictate what tool is best. The key thing you want from a street camera are something reasonably compact, a standard lens, 35mm, 50mm on full frame, around 80mm on medium format cameras, fast enough to work in low light, and controls you can access without taking your eye off the scene. I normally shoot manual. I keep my ISO fairly high, somewhere between 100 and 6400, sometimes higher, depending on conditions, because I need fast shutter speeds to freeze movement. And I would rather have a bit of grain in an image than a blurred subject. And I always shoot RAW plus JPEG so that I can see an approximation of the final image, sometimes in black and white, on the back of the camera. But I've still got the full flexibility of boosting this up in post-production. That's it. That's the technical setup. And if that sounds like a lot of numbers, perhaps you're not a photographer, please don't worry. The most important piece of gear in shooting this is your nerves. Now, I've definitely had the odd look from someone that I've just photographed. They knew, but they weren't quite sure enough to actually say anything. That's all part of the game. That's what keeps you on your toes. And honestly, a good pair of running shoes is just as important as a good lens when you're shooting from the hip. Everything else is about your eyes and about your instincts. Now, I want to finish this first photography video with something a bit more philosophical. And bear with me here. Street photography, at its core, is about one thing. It's about bearing witness. You're recording the fact that these people existed, that they stood on this corner, in this light, on this day, with this expression on their face. And in 50 years or 100 years, someone might look at that image and feel something. Recognition, nostalgia, curiosity, sadness, joy, because of what you've captured in that fraction of a second. That's not a small thing. Oh, It's actually a remarkable thing when you think about it. The great photographers understood this. Cartier-Bresson talked about the decisive moment, that instance when form, content, and expression perfectly align. And if you miss it, it's gone forever. Vivian Mayer spent her whole life doing this and didn't show anybody, or hardly anybody, her images. But what she's left behind is an extraordinary record of mid-20th century American life, seen through one very particular, very human pair of eyes. That's what I want to do in Europe. Not just take pretty pictures of pretty places. There's plenty of channels doing that and doing it very, very well. But I want to find the faces. That weathered fisherman in Portugal, the laughing market trader in Palermo, the odd couple on the bench in Prague who've clearly been sitting in exactly that same space for 40 years. I want to find these people and I want to bring them back to you and to this channel. That's the promise of this series. Now, in the next video in this series, we're going to get very practical. We're going to talk about shooting from the hip. It's my personal favourite style of street photography, and it's the one that I think produces some of the most cinematic, exciting and immediate images that you can make with a camera. Now, I will tell you something interesting though. I was once doing a training film for photographers on the streets of Cardiff with my great friend and fellow photographic trainer Mark Leghorn. And during the shoot, I asked Mark what he did with his images. And he said, sometimes I don't even look at them. It's the process that's more important than the finished result. And I thought to myself, Jesus, that's absolutely incredible. And when I think about it, I've got no financial gain in shooting the streets. You know, perhaps I'll make a book of it, or I'll stick the images up on a website, or put something on my socials, you know, but that's about it. Listen, let me know the one thing that's stopping you from trying street photography, if it's something you would like to try. Is it the gear, or is it the nerve? Let me know in the comments below, please. And hit the bell so you don't miss it. There's some more detailed videos coming soon on this channel, so please stick around for them. And if you've got questions about street photography, anything at all, just drop them in the comments. I read every single one, and I will do my best to answer them. My name's Kenny Martin. This is Places and Faces Europe, and I will see you on the next one. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got a motorhome to go and look at. Bye for now.